Hello and welcome back to just another F1 podcast here on Apex Motorsport. My name is Richard Smyth and this is Season 2, Episode 1, and today I'm joined by a person that's very regular on this channel. It is of course Ryan Caldwell. Ryan, thank you for joining me this one, and are you excited to see the Formula 1 season coming back very, very soon?
Yeah, I'm glad. Winter testing, I'm glad that we're on the final run, the stretch now, going through the livery stages. We get to see the teams come out, and it's just all getting building the excitement now, as well as something else that's going to be coming out soon, I hope. But no, the excitement's building. I'm excited.
We're going to start today's podcast off by playing a little bit of a game. At the end of the last season, we started playing a bit of F1 higher lower, but we're going to change that up, at least for this episode, and play F1 anagram. It's quite simple. Me and Ryan are going to give each other three drivers with their names scrambled up, and we'll have to try to guess who it is. It could be any driver from any season, but I think we've tried to be kind to each other. Well, at least I've been kind to Ryan. So Ryan, I'm going to give you your three drivers here. I'm going to read them out to you and just have a guess. And if you're listening at home, have a guess as well. Hopefully you can get them. So the first driver is Bontut.
Boncut.
Tut.
Tut.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, I'll give you all three and you can work them out in one go.
Okay.
The second driver is Burghknell.
Right.
And your final driver is Aliotmn.
ALI
OT
OT
H
H
MN.
MN. Right. Okay. I think I know what one is, but the other two I think I might have to sit for a second here. Do you want me to throw you over yours?
Yeah, go on.
Right. So we start off NEAIPZM.
Okay.
And your next one?
Yep.
Now this one's not recent. He'd be, a wee bit older, but you should get it relatively easy from the way I have it jumbled. But ARLBECORLIH.
I'm confused with that one.
And then your last one, CUESHARCHM.
Okay. I feel like we've sort of gone down a similar line with these. So about 5 minutes has passed now. I'll give Ryan enough time to try to work these out. I got mine fairly quickly. Ryan, do you want to tell me? I'll tell you who I got first then. So.
Yep, work away.
Your first one, Mazepin.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Second one, Barrichello.
Yep.
And the third one, Schumacher.
Yeah, that's spot on there.
And your attempts.
Guess. Well, I'm gonna guess the first one was Button.
Correct.
And obviously the second one was the man, the myth, the legend, Hulkenberg.
Yep.
But this last one, I genuinely don't have a clue.
I think you're going to be kicking yourself when I tell you it's 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton.
Oh. HAMILT. Ah, jeez.
The clue was there when I said for the last one we were going down like a similar route because I knew it was Schumacher straight away.
Alright. Oh, I couldn't get that.
I think
me sitting there going MAN. I was like, right, we've got MAN, could start with TH, but who starts with TH? Nobody really starts with TH. And then I was sitting there like, whenever you started saying it, I was like, ILOT, and I was like, wait, no, that's Formula 2, we need to go back to Formula 1. And I was sitting there trying to think, when you give me the first couple of letters, and then the rest of them came in, I was like, I haven't a clue.
Yeah, your second one was quite difficult, but then it clicked that it was Barrichello. But that was
Yeah.
a good one. I think out of all the games played so far, you're the first person that got something wrong. We'll start into the main topics now. The Australian Grand Prix, well, it's been postponed. Bahrain starting the season. Pre-season testing is just like 2 weeks away now. Ryan, are you happy to see Bahrain starting the season, or would you prefer to have seen Australia in the starting spot for the season?
Well, as it comes with all things, we've over the years we've seen there has been different starting grids and different starting locations. Australia seems to have been the one that stuck the best. It is a good season opener, but it's not quite exciting. I think Bahrain will add to a better opening, because usually we see it as a nighttime race, and I'm not sure whether now when things start into the days start to get a wee bit longer, will we see a bit more daytime action rather than straight nighttime? I don't know. Be different if that is the case. But no, I'll be quite excited to see Bahrain as a season opener straight after testing with a bit of speed around the track to see what the cars really can do.
Yeah, I think it would be a good sort of way for the teams to see the difference between the testing cars in the first race in Bahrain, because usually pre-season testings in Barcelona, and by the time that comes around, the teams are bringing new packages to the cars. But this year we're seeing the same cars for testing. They're staying in Bahrain, which just means there's very little time for work to be done. And although testing you usually have to take the results with a pinch of salt, this year could actually prove to be fairly accurate. But they are chatting about potentially swapping the Australian Grand Prix with the MotoGP race, I believe it is, or the World Superbike round. It's one of those two events permanently. So Australia looks like it could be moving to a November race, which is towards the end of the season, where it used to be in the past. Do you think, Ryan, that given we've seen Australia open the season, and while some races have been good, it's usually been fairly dull, and it's like a 6 a.m. start or something in the UK. Do you think that moving to November might just be a little bit more interesting, given for Formula 1 fans there's something to get up for if there's a title race on the line?
Yeah, as we've seen with most races, whenever they go further abroad from sort of in around Europe, the time zone shift does change a lot, but normally that happens in the second half of the season, so we're all well used to getting up earlier for it. Whereas if it's at the start, you have to get up early, and then the rest of them are sort of normal time, so you don't really get into that pattern of so many weekends in a row you're getting up early, and then all of a sudden you can lie in, and then you forget about it the next weekend because you're like, oh wait, is it not? So I think having them all sort of placed around that time, first half of the season suits Europeans better, but then people further abroad, these later races suit other people as well. So I think it helps fans all around the world, having half and half rather than a whole mixed show around the place.
And obviously, when the season starts in Bahrain, the Formula 1 grid will look fairly different this season. With the cars moving, fairly the same car moving forward. There was a lot of chat, beginning of the 2020 season, that most teams would just be retaining their driver lineup. We know now that's not the case, and there's a number of driver transfers, and we have discussed a few of them on the podcast before, but it's been a little while. It's been a couple months since the last podcast, and we've sort of seen how they're settling in with the teams with testing and stuff. So we're just going to run through the driver transfers now and just give our thoughts on it, with probably one of the most high profile moves being Sergio Perez moving to Red Bull. Obviously he wasn't kept on with Aston Martin for this season. Ren, do you think Perez to Red Bull is a brilliant move, because he's replacing Albon, who's still with the team as a test reserve driver? Do you think Perez will be able to just be closer to Verstappen and give Red Bull that second driver that can actually fight for podiums on a consistent basis?
I think with his experience and knowledge behind, teams, he can definitely learn quite fast and how to get up to speed quite quickly with Verstappen. However, Verstappen, as we know, isn't a character to be played with and doesn't take a dogfight essentially quite so easy. He'll definitely still try to get the most out of that car, and Perez will understandably be the B driver. Whether, yes, Christian Horner has said that there is no A and there is no B, but it's quite clear to everyone else who watches Formula One who the A driver is, as we've seen over the last, 3-4 seasons, from Daniel Ricardo to Pierre to, we've seen how it goes. But no, it'll be quite interesting to see what Perez can do. I think he's gonna definitely shock a lot of people in that car. Might be not the quickest to get started up, but once he gets into the season, as we seen last year, he really, really does provide some great results.
And for the first time since Ricardo left, Red Bull have two race winning drivers in the car, albeit Perez winning one race in Sakir, but he's still a race winner, and with that brings do you think that actually brings sort of a free pass to Red Bull whenever, say, comes to Belgium Grand Prix and Perez isn't performing, he's performing the same level as Gasly and Albon was, but he's not quite there with Verstappen. Do you think Red Bull might be more reluctant to replace him, given he's not from the Red Bull program? He's the first driver, I think, since Webber in 2007 to get into the main Red Bull team that's not part of the driver academy. Do you think Red Bull will be reluctant to replace him because he's got race winning experience and he's got a brilliant racing CV to back him up?
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite hard for Red Bull to, you know, lay him off as such as he did with Pierre and Albon. Yes, we've seen that the results, it was good. Start of the season for Pierre was alright, then he just dropped, and yeah, then Albon came in, showed great promise, came into the next season, had a wee iffy start, and then it all went downhill. So hopefully Perez can be the one to break that cycle, but if not, it's going to be quite hard to strip him away from Formula One at this point, because there's so much support behind him, and fans back him so much. He's the only Mexican driver in the sport, so all of Mexico is practically rooting for him to stay in that seat and do really well. So I can see it's going to be quite difficult for Red Bull to do anything if they do decide to try and let him go if his performance isn't quite up to what they expected.
It's definitely a driver lineup that I'm really excited to see, because you've got two drivers for Red Bull that you could see challenging for podiums, and if Red Bull can get their package sorted out, and we see Mercedes struggling, to fit the car around with the budget cap, although it doesn't seem to be the case. I think you saw it work out later in the season, but if Red Bull can put a challenge to Mercedes, there's no reason why, for at least the constructors' point of view, they can really challenge them, because they've got two good drivers. But the driver who is replacing Perez at Aston Martin is four-time world champion Sebastian Vettel. We didn't know where he was going to go after it was announced he was leaving Ferrari. Ryan, are you glad to see Vettel still in the sport, and do you think he'll do well with Aston Martin?
As we've seen with the BWT Sport Pesa Formula One, whatever you want to call it at that point, back then, we've seen the progression over the last 3 years. Yes, about the whole copy thing, forget about that, but in terms of how they've developed that car over the years, they have come quite close to being a top 3 team. Outstanding Ferrari, outstanding McLaren. They were close this season. I can't remember how many points was in it. It was very, very, very little. But no, they really had that opportunity, and I think this year moving forward, Perez is gone. He's been used to that car, used to that team, but we've got Vettel. And I think everyone noticed over the last 2 seasons since Charles Leclerc came into Ferrari, Vettel's sort of, mindset has changed. Instead of, taking chances and pushing the car, he's just trying to keep up with Charles, mentally and, in the car as well. And I think that's sort of deteriorated his image a bit. I think this year now he has a new fresh lease of life, and maybe a trip to Turkey like Lewis might help as well. But no, I think he has a great chance this year at proving his worth on the team that I'm glad to see back on the grid.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to see him still on the grid, because there was a chance that he wasn't going to be in the grid, and there was chat about the likes of Rankinen, not coming back, and Alonso, wasn't even rumoured to be coming back to sport then. So Hamilton could have been only a world champion on the grid, if I'm correct, which would have really symbolised sort of the way the new drivers are coming through. But it's nice to see world champions, especially a multiple world champion, he brings that sort of prestige and a marketability, which for Aston Martin being this iconic British brand, that they're really trying to move away from the Racing Point Force India. They want to be Aston Martin. It's a brilliant move for them because Vettel is a good driver, experienced, and it's the best thing or the closest thing to Mercedes power car he'll get. He's in the Aston Martin, has a Mercedes engine. He's not going to get to the works team, so he might as well have a car that last season won a race and got on the podium 2 or 3 other times. So it's definitely a good move for him. But he left Ferrari obviously, and the driver who replaced him in Ferrari was Carlos Sainz, who left McLaren. The Norris Sainz friendship is no more, but hopefully we'll get on to the driver that replaced Sainz at McLaren in a minute. But Ryan, do you think Sainz moving to Ferrari will sort of help him give that boost back of confidence and belief in himself? Because as much as we've seen a friendship grow with Norris, there was never really sort of competitiveness there, despite McLaren finishing third in the Constructors' Championship. Do you think it just might give him that little bit a boost to really just push forward even more?
I think with this season, he's not going to Ferrari just to be a sitting duck, as we've seen in the past with Ferrari. I think he's going to really challenge Charles this year. I think, the friendship, the friendly friendship sort of bond isn't there. Yes, they are good mates and stuff within the team, but I think the dynamic this year is going to be slightly different in Ferrari than what it was last year. As we seen last year, it was just, focused on Charles. I think this year it's going to be quite 50-50 splits, and I could see a bit of, Mercedes strategy going in this year over the classic Spinato, let's go. I think there's a good chance that with a more balanced driver lineup, with Carlos with his experience and Charles with his speed, I think there's going to be a lot more, not so much challenging each other, but challenging together as a team to push further up the grid. I think that's what we're going to see this year between the two.
And the driver that's replacing Sainz at McLaren is Daniel Ricardo, who leaves the now Alpine team. It's a lot of change in drivers this season. We didn't expect it, but here we are. Ricardo to McLaren, it's quite an exciting move. He was rumoured to potentially take that Ferrari seat. He didn't get it, but I think McLaren's probably the best team he could have went to, because going to the team that was third in the Constructors' Championship, got a brand new Mercedes engine in the back of the car this year. Ryan, could you see Ricardo being on the podium more often this season? He was on twice last season. Do you think he might even get 5 or 6 podiums this season?
Podiums are really likely for McLaren this season. I think, with that Mercedes backing, with that engine, I think something special is going to happen. Yes, it's going to be the first time in a long time since they've had a Mercedes power unit. And I think if you go back then, they were close to winning world championships. They're not going to obviously be able to take on Mercedes, because Mercedes is going to have a better engine yet again, as they're not the customer. But no, I think this year there's a better fighting chance for Ricardo to get on that top step, especially with a car like McLaren. We seen last year the improvement they had, and let's see if he can get a scenario 7 and not forget the shoey this time.
That's very true. There's 2 more big sort of driver transfers that we'll get through quickly. 2-time world champion Fernando Alonso has come back to the sport to Alpine. Ryan, are you glad to see Alonso back in Formula 1, or do you think his time is really up? Alpine should give one of their younger drivers a chance?
I think we need to see Alonso back. It's not so much whether we wanted to. I think we need to see him come back. If you look at the past, yes, he's come on and went through different teams. He went, the Mercedes, McLaren to the Ferrari, and then he went Renault. Well, he started off with Renault and he was all over the grid. But I think returning now to Renault/Alpine, we need to see what he can do. He talks the talk. He's seen he can prove his worth in other sports, just IndyCar. He can provide results elsewhere, and he has an amazing driver talent and skill set. So it'll be exciting to see what he can do with that car over Esteban Ocon. Now we know Ocon's been in the car last year. He got familiar with it quite quick, and he was pushing on Ricardo quite a lot. Whether we see that this season with Alonso only getting familiar with the car in pre-season testing and other events outside of it, it'd be quite exciting to see how this plays out. Whether Alonso still has his touch, or was he just a lost cause and they should have brought in someone else like Guan Yu Zhou. Maybe they should have took the chance, maybe not, but we need to see what this man has to offer for the team.
So Alpine obviously didn't take a look at their Formula 2 drivers, but one team that did was AlphaTauri, and Yuki Tsunoda is making a step up, replacing Daniel Kvyat. And he's got a very experienced teammate alongside him now, Pierre Gasly, race winner. He's got another podium. He's a fantastic driver. He's a fantastic story. We love him on this channel, and anyone listening will know. How excited are you to see a driver even younger than Pierre Gasly coming through and potentially pushing him to make Gasly even better?
As the saying goes, never judge a book by its cover, but this book seems to have a very interesting cover. Not that he fit in the cover of the book, he's quite small, but I think, with smallness, you never need to underestimate small people, because he's lighter, so take that into account. But no, I think Tsunoda has quite a lot to offer alongside Gasly, and I think the pair up between them is going to be quite interesting to see the team dynamic this year. In previous seasons we've seen how him and Daniel get on, but it's not that sort of dynamic we see at McLaren. It's just a wee bit of a weird wavelength sort of a thing. But I think this year it's going to be a wee bit different. Tsunoda's not there to play games, to have fun. He's there to show that he's got a special talent from the Japanese side that he wants to bring forward into Formula 1, and it'll be quite interesting to see how he pairs up against Gasly in the AlphaTauri this year.
Moving on now to some other Formula 1 news, and we'll try to run through these as quickly as we can. But Formula 1 are potentially going to try to make a return to Africa, another continent that they haven't raced on in a while. South Africa is the most likely place, but Morocco is also talked about. Ryan, what do you think of a potential race in Africa?
It's needed. It really is needed. For a world championship to be called a world championship, you have to go across the different continents, and Africa has been left out for quite some time. So hopefully we could actually see, if the sport goes back to Africa, maybe we could see, a South African come into the sport, and race again, because it's been quite a long time, I think, since there was ever someone from Africa to race in Formula 1. So it'll be quite interesting to see the knock-on effect that has if they do, potentially return to Africa. It'll be quite good to finally have a complete set of races across the world to deem it a full world championship.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And some good news, Silverstone are potentially having fans in this year. There's 350 odd thousand people that attend over the weekend. With the way the vaccine rollout here in the UK is going, apparently restrictions could be being lifted on the 21st of June. That's the earliest date. But with I think the British Grand Prix is the 18th of July. It'd be great to see fans back in. I have tickets myself, and I would really love it to go ahead, but obviously if things don't improve, you can understand why it might be held behind closed doors. But Ryan, given Silverstone might be one of the first races back with fans, given the way things in the UK are progressing, do you think that will be a boost for the drivers, especially like Hamilton, Russell, Norris, to see fans back to grandstands, because they've had pretty much a full season without any spectators watching them?
I think, with all sports we've seen that the morale in the play is slightly different from when they had fans to when they don't. We've seen with Formula 1, it's slightly different because they're not focusing on looking around the fans as they're driving around the track. They're focusing on the next corner, how they're going to enter, the speed they need to enter in their braking time. Where it's different with the likes of football, once they score a goal and, the fans are there, the celebration goes crazy and they get more excited, more focused on the game, and they want to do more for their fans. The same could be said this season if they do allow fans back in. Lewis Hamilton, I'm just going to put it out there really quickly, He's gonna win the British Grand Prix without a doubt, unless something spectacular happens. But that's the way the story normally plays out. But no, I think even for the likes of George Russell and Lando Norris, having British fans in a British racetrack with a British team, which McLaren is, and well, Mercedes partly is, all the team bases are pretty much in the UK anyway. It's gonna be quite not nostalgic, I guess you could say, because it's not been that long since we had fans, but it'll be good to see the feel around the paddock and the grid, having fans back in, and I'll be quite excited myself to see what happens when fans come back.
And one driver who has a lot of fans, Max Verstappen, there's been a few rumours that he could potentially be moving to Mercedes in 2022 if Lewis Hamilton leaves. Maybe even Bottas leaves, but that's highly unlikely you'll see Hamilton and Verstappen in one team. Ryan, do you think this could be possible? Could you see Max Verstappen leaving Red Bull? There is reports of a potential release clause in his contract, but could you see Mercedes signing him for next season, for 2022? Now, there's also the possibility that both Russell and Verstappen could be in the Mercedes team if they want a complete clean slate from 2022. I see that highly unlikely. Just very quickly, Ryan, could you see Verstappen and Russell be in the same team?
Now, if that was ever a possibility, I think that would be the most unstoppable force on the whole grid. Apart from the fact that I can't say that word right, but the competitiveness, there we go. It might just be too much, and there'd be quite a lot of strain between the two drivers. They're both proven that they have the utmost ability to absolutely destroy the field when they're in the right moment on the right day. I just feel that if they were paired up, it would be an unbelievable scene to watch. It would be as if, it'd be almost be like a Rosberg Hamilton situation where them two were just at the top every weekend, in and out, in and out, in and out, battling between each other. But we seen the dynamic wasn't there, and things got a wee bit stressful, and errors and mistakes were made. And I wouldn't want to see that between those two drivers, especially not nowadays when the grid seems to be more friendly and lively and happier than what it was back, 4 or 5 years ago. So to have them together would be cool to see, but I don't think it would work.
Haas have also announced that Fittipaldi is going to remain as their reserve driver. He done a solid job when he replaced Grosjean after that horrific crash last year, and I must say it's great to see Grosjean back in the car over in America, the IndyCar, getting some experience so quickly after that. Ryan, do you think having Pietro Fittipaldi in the team for Haas, because he has two Grand Prix experience, it's not an awful lot, but he's more than both the drivers, do you think that will help them too, or do you think they should have signed someone a bit like a Sebastian Buemi, who hasn't been in Formula 1 for a while, but has been with a Formula 1 team for quite some time now, as testing in the simulator, just to give these two drivers enough support going forward?
Haas is in a funny situation. If they did decide to bring in Sebastian Buemi again, after he's in Formula E, for quite some time, the changeover, I don't know if he can just simply jump into a Formula 1 car and do what people would expect him to do. We've seen that. If we were going to have Stoffel Van Dorn back in to replace Hamilton that weekend, would he have performed the way George did in that car? I don't think so. I think they've been away from Formula 1 just a bit too long, whereas Fernando Alonso hasn't been away that long. It's been 2-3 years. I think that's about the amount of time he's been away, but that's not that long. Whereas them boys have been out Formula E, they're used to different lines, they're used to different tracks, they're used to different driving styles. Bringing this back into Formula 1 might be a wee bit hard for him. So having Fittipaldi, who's been in Formula 2 and has had an appearance, well, 2 appearances in Formula 1, he probably would have been a better option than the Russian, should I say. I'll not say his name just to save ourselves. I think having Fittipaldi there as the reserve, he maybe should have gotten more of a chance than what he has been given at this moment. But, money talks, and we'll just leave it at that.
And the McLaren G driver Daniel Ricardo is announced that he's got a 3-year contract with the team, which seems to be quite lengthy given his age and the way the regulations are changed or were changing for next season. And do you think this is just the ultimate, like, putting his faith in the McLaren and hoping that from 2022 they could have a championship challenging package?
I think that's really likely. With the development they're going to have alongside Mercedes, I think that when the regulation change comes in, yes, obviously there is the engine freeze, but in terms of outside development within, the power unit, they'll be working alongside Mercedes to make sure that both teams, and well, even all their customer teams, the Williams could even, surprise us and have a come up in 2022. Highly unlikely, but you never know, because as we seen the last time the big regulation change came in, the Williams were at one point nearly a top 3 team, so we could see something spectacular happen there. But no, Ricardo with a 3-year contract, I think he's putting quite a lot of faith in the team like he did with Renault. However, Renault only started to provide him that, that experience he was promised near the end of the season, which I think maybe he might regret it depending how this season plays out. But I think ultimately this change to McLaren and the faith and the promise McLaren has shown now over the last 2 years in terms of their development of their car, they could be onto something big. And I think, within the next 2 years after this season, Ricardo will be fighting for multiple wins.
And another story that it's more rumours than actual reports is Williams' story, and Rich Energy could be coming back to Formula One, everyone's favourite team sponsor. And I think we should just say a big thank you to everyone who supported your video, Ryan, that you made on Rich Energy. It's by far our most viewed video, and it's completely incredible the support we got in that. But Ryan, Rich Energy coming back, do you see that being a possibility?
It could be. We've seen now since they've left, not to bring any spoilers out of our video, make sure you check it out if you haven't watched it. We explain sort of what happened and what went through after they left Formula One, Rich Energy. But as we've seen, they've had success outside of Formula One in other motorsports, sponsoring a mini series and a British Superbike team. So they're starting to build up their portfolio again, so it wouldn't surprise me if they're going to add Formula One back onto their agenda to try and slip back into the grid and slowly work their way up again. We've seen with Haas that was a bit of a show, shall we say, without adding the other word before it. But no, I think with this sponsorship, if they decide to come back in, there's going to be a few questions raised and financial accounts are going to be looked into a lot more. But I think Rich Energy are on the way up for once compared to, shall they say, what they thought were their biggest competitor, Red Bull, whenever they couldn't even beat Boost off the line. And if you don't know what Boost is, it's basically another energy drink that's well known within the UK. So we'll just say that, they're not there yet, but if they were to come back into Formula One, it's going to be quite questionable how realistic they're going to sponsor the team that they choose.
They were making a big announcement, it was last week or the week before, saying that they're going to be coming back to the sport in 2021 as a sponsor of a team before then taking over the team the following season, or at least the title sponsorship. It does seem very unlikely, but we'll move on to our final topic of today, because we're recording this on the Tuesday and the Alpine livery is about to be revealed very shortly, so we don't want to miss that. Let us know in the comments below what you think of it, because we haven't seen it. Ryan, just very, very quickly, in just a couple of words, do you think this Alpine livery is going to be nice?
Depending if they stick to the sort of dark theme that they've shown, for their testing livery, if they stick with that, yes, it's nice, but I want to see, more of a metallic blue or a nice glossy dark blue or something like that with the red and the white stripe on it. I think that would look really, really nice. Hopefully it does go that way and what we're expecting, and not something completely random that we're not. We're still waiting to see what Aston Martin has to offer tomorrow, which will be the 3rd. So if Aston Martin comes round after this, BWT partnership again, hopefully we don't see too much pink on the car, because green and pink I don't think will look quite so well together as much as Mercedes' nice red Ineos worked quite well last year with the black car. So, here's fingers crossed and hoping.
So the final topic of today is the return of Drive to Survive, something that all Formula 1 fans are so excited for, because it's fallen perfectly between the end of testing and the start of the new season, which is short enough. It just means we can really go a weekend without missing motorsport, Formula 1 in particular. Ryan, how excited are you to see Season 3 of Drive to Survive?
I am so ready for this season to be released. There's going to be some major key points that obviously we don't get to see the behind the scenes of, but Netflix managed to bring that to us. Remember last season we had the Gunther Steiner moment where I think it was Kevin walked out the door and slammed the door and then he just that was quite good. But I think this year we're going to have a bit more excitement. We'll maybe get an in-depth into Ferrari and see what was really going on that made Vettel leave, and we might actually see something really interesting, which I hope they were documenting at this time. But the point where I was about to call him Force India, but Racing Point, they had the little Perez situation, and everyone's favourite Renault driver had made an appearance again, Mr. Hulkenberg. So I'm hoping to see maybe that documented too. I'm so ready for this season. I just can't wait for it to happen.
There's so many stories from last season. Like it's fantastic. The season started with the Norris podium, but a couple of things I think would be nice to see a more in-depth look at from sort of the driver's perspective and inside the paddock, because we haven't really seen too much of that. About the Grosjean crash. A really in-depth look at that. Not the crash in particular, but how even the safety the safety and medical teams work. If they done something like that, it would be brilliant to see more life inside Formula 1 paddock and not just the 20 drivers and the team principals. And the Verstappen, was it Hungary where he crashed in the warm-up laps and the mechanics had to rush for sort the car out. Formula 1 done a video on that. I think it's their on-track side series. It was a couple of weeks ago, and it was a fantastic look at it. It'll be interesting to see if Netflix document that and how they do it, and could they be interviewing the likes of the engineers and stuff and mechanics, because it could be very interesting. And another few things, the Gasly one at Imola, sort of what it was like. We don't really know where they were filming when, because they've only got so many crews, and with the restrictions they weren't really allowed to move too much. And then, of course, the Russell incident in Sakir. It'll be interesting because I think Mercedes, although they didn't take part in the first series, they do seem to be quite open. And I think from the team's point of view, they know they can get a lot of fans from Drive to Survive if they open up. And it's a good thing for Formula 1. Ryan, do you think this could be the final season, or do you think this is something that they're going to hope to continue and make even better every season?
I hope so. Having this in-depth, behind-the-scenes sort of access that the members of the public outside of, the grid don't get to see this sort of stuff. It's exciting. Yes, obviously the crews for Netflix know what's going on, but I really like, the whole behind-the-scenes stuff, especially with the Haas team. That was hilarious last season. But I think if they manage to get an extended deal next year from Formula 1 to cover the whole, that's going to be amazing. Whenever we get we're on season 3, which is last year, then we'll have this year, which will be season 4, but season 5 after the year of the new regulations, that's going to be a treat. I hope they get to go the whole way up to that. Please, Netflix, do something, sign a deal, get it done, get it on the paper. Do I need to start talking about football again? Give him what he wants, sign the deal. A few people might understand what I'm on about here, but no. We need this. This is the best thing for the fans in the off season and the build up to Formula 1 starting again. it's almost become like a part of my life. Those 2 weeks before everything kicks off, we get Drives to Survive, and then you catch up and recap about last season. Oh, it's amazing. But no, I hope it stays.
Yeah, it just builds excitement for the new season. So that is going to be the end of this podcast. It's went on a little bit longer than we intended to, but there was a lot to recap, a lot we didn't cover, which we'll probably get onto at a future time. The next podcast, I think we're planning to have after the preseason testing. So hopefully we start that. Then we're going to try and do one for every race this season. Fingers crossed. Anyway, obviously things might change, but if they do, make sure you follow us on all our social media accounts so you don't miss out. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, give us a follow so you get updated when the next upload goes up. The same with YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. Since the last podcast, we've hit 500 subscribers. We're now in, I think, 555 time recording, which is incredible. So thank you once again, everyone, for your support. We also started a TikTok account. It's at the Apex Motorsport. Go check it out. The very first video is a 60-second recap of the 2020 season. For those who don't want to wait to Drive to Survive, there's a 60-second recap there. So yeah, that's going to bring the end of this podcast. Brian, thank you so much for joining for this one. Very enjoyable indeed, and we hope to see you all in the next one. So thank you all so much for listening. See you all next time. Goodbye.